There are no accidents in why you are here. Listening to these words in this very moment, life has a way of weaving together threads that seem invisible until suddenly they form a pattern so clear you cannot deny it anymore. Right now, you are standing in front of such a pattern. Think of it as a window of frequency opening just for you. And somehow, through all the noise and endless scrolling, you stepped right through it. This isn't another piece of content to fill your day. This is a transmission, a reminder that you are on the threshold of something far deeper than you may have realized. The universe never misplaces its invitations. And the fact that you are here, present, listening, is proof that the invitation was always meant for you. For so long, many of us have lived as though life is happening to us. We wait for signs, for external confirmation that our prayers are heard or that our dreams are valid. We search for answers in bank accounts, in relationships, in jobs, in circumstances, and when we don't find them, we assume nothing is happening. But the truth is gentler and far more profound. Silence does not mean absence. Stillness does not mean nothing is moving. In fact, stillness is often the final stage of preparation. The seed rests beneath the soil before it breaks open. The night lingers its longest, just before the light returns. And right now, what feels like waiting is actually the universe arranging itself around you. Quantum physicists might call this the collapse point, the moment when infinite possibilities hover in suspension, waiting for consciousness to choose one. Your own life has been hovering in that place. Every prayer you whispered, every vision you held, every moment you chose faith instead of fear. They've been gathering, waiting for the precise moment when the door could open. And here you are, standing before it. The great paradox is that most people stumble right at this very threshold. They tighten their grip. They beg for proof. They look around frantically as if they must control the final unfolding. But manifestation, at its purest, does not come from force. It comes from release. It is counterintuitive, yes, but deeply natural. The seed never questions whether it will become a tree. The river never forces itself to flow downstream. And you, too, are invited to stop wrestling with life and begin allowing it. This moment asks you to surrender, not in the sense of giving up your desires, but in releasing the desperate need to control how and when they arrive. When you cling, you are operating from lack. When you release, you open to abundance. Imagine trying to catch the reflection of the moon in water. If you splash and stir the surface, the reflection disappears. But when you let the water be still, the light comes to you. The same is true of your dreams. You are not here to chase after life. You are here to attune yourself to the frequency of receiving. And that shift from grasping to allowing changes everything. It changes the way energy flows through your body. It changes the signals your heart sends out into the quantum field. It changes the very frequency that reality responds to. Wanting energy pushes away. Receiving energy magnetizes. And the moment you understand this, you begin to live differently, not as someone who is trying to manifest, but as someone who naturally receives because they know they are already connected to what they seek. If you are here, it is because the universe is asking you to remember, not to learn something new, not to struggle for something outside yourself, but to remember the truth you once knew, before the noise of the world buried it. Under doubt, you are not separate from what you desire. The gap you feel is not distance. It is simply frequency, and frequency can change in an instant. The invitation before you today is to step back into that knowing, to breathe as someone who trusts, to walk as someone who is already cared for, to live as though the universe has been orchestrating every synchronicity, not against you, but for you, because it has. Every closed door was a redirection. Every delay was divine timing. Every silence was the ground preparing itself for a harvest. So take this moment seriously, but not with heaviness, with reverence. You did not stumble into this. You were guided. You were called. This message is not a coincidence. It is a frequency rendezvous. Life has brought you here to remind you of your power, your presence, and your place in a universe that has always been conspiring in your favor. And as you sit with these words, notice how your body responds. Perhaps there's a quiet stirring in your chest, or a deep sense of recognition that goes beyond logic. That is not imagination. That is remembrance. Your consciousness knows this truth because it is woven into your very being. And from this place of remembering, everything shifts. 1. Letting go and surrender. There comes a point in every journey where holding on too tightly becomes the very reason we cannot move forward. I know this because I lived it. For years, I thought desire meant gripping harder, controlling more, constantly reminding myself of what I wanted, as if sheer willpower could bend the universe to my timeline. But what I learned, often painfully, is that clutching at life only pushes it further from reach. It is like trying to grasp water with your fists. The tighter you hold, the faster it slips through your fingers. We are taught from an early age that effort is everything, that if we just try hard enough, plan enough, hustle enough, life will reward us. And yes, effort has its place. But when it comes to the deepest desires of the heart, the love we long for, the peace we crave, the freedom we seek, effort alone is not the bridge. In fact, too much effort often becomes the wall that blocks the very thing we are reaching for. Think of a seed resting quietly in the soil. It does not strain to become a tree. It does not demand, "When will I grow?" It does not try to force the rain or command the sun. It simply surrenders to the natural intelligence of life, the same intelligence that spins galaxies and carries oceans in their tides. That seed trusts the process, even when nothing is visible on the surface, and one day, without fanfare, it breaks open and new life emerges. Surrender works the same way in us. When we release the tension of constant control, when we loosen our grip on how things must unfold, we allow a greater intelligence to move through us. And that intelligence knows the way. It has always known the way. I used to resist that word surrender. To me, it sounded like defeat, like giving up, like failure. But life taught me something different. True surrender is not weakness. It is alignment. It is choosing to trust the current of the river instead of exhausting yourself, swimming upstream. Imagine a river flowing strong and steady. If you fight against it, thrash against the current, you tire, you struggle, and you make little progress. But when you allow the current to carry you, you still move, only with ease. You still reach where you're meant to go, but without the exhaustion and fear. Letting go is not abandoning your dreams. It is releasing your need to control the timing, the form, the exact appearance of those dreams. It is saying, I am open to being surprised. I trust that life has a wisdom larger than my imagination. And when you reach that space, miracles slip in quietly, often in ways you never could have planned. I remember seasons of my life when nothing seemed to work. Every door I knocked on remained shut. Every effort fell flat. And in my stubbornness, I doubled down, working harder, pushing more, demanding results. All it gave me was exhaustion. It was only when I finally paused when I admitted, I can't do this by force anymore. That space opened for something different. It felt like laying down a burden I had been carrying for years. And in that emptiness, the right opportunities arrived. The right people entered. The right timing revealed itself. We don't realize how heavy control is until we put it down. We don't realize how much life we miss by constantly checking for signs, refreshing for proof, analyzing every outcome. Control is a form of fear. Surrender is a form of love. And love has always been the greater power. When you loosen your grip, you don't lose your dreams. You give them room to breathe. You create space for them to unfold in ways your limited perspective could never have imagined. Sometimes what arrives looks exactly like what you pictured, but often it looks even better, something your heart longed for but your mind didn't yet know how to name. The great irony is this: the moment you stop chasing, what you longed for begins to chase you. Because in surrender, your energy shifts. You stop broadcasting lack and start broadcasting readiness. You stop vibrating with desperation and begin vibrating with trust. And trust is magnetic. Trust tells the universe, I believe you. I believe myself. I believe that what is meant for me is already mine in essence, and it will come in form at the right time. I cannot promise you that surrender will always feel easy. Sometimes it feels like stepping off a cliff without seeing the bridge below. Sometimes it feels like silence that stretches longer than you hoped. But I can promise you, this surrender will always lead you closer to freedom than control ever could. Because control is the cage. Surrender is the key. So if you find yourself clinging right now, clinging to the outcome of a relationship, clinging to the number in your bank account, clinging to the fear that time is running out, I invite you to pause, to breathe, to feel what it's like, even just for a moment, to set it down. Whisper to yourself, I don't need to force this anymore. I choose to trust. And notice the lightness that enters when you do. Life is not asking you to give up on your dreams. It is asking you to give up the illusion that you alone must carry them. You are not doing this journey by yourself. You never were. The same power that breathes through your lungs and beats your heart while you sleep, that power knows how to guide you. When you learn to let go, you discover that surrender isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of a new one written not in fear, but in faith, not in striving, but in flowing. And in that flow, you realize you were never meant to force life into shape. You were meant to dance with it. 2. The power of the present. There is a quiet truth that life eventually teaches us. Often, after years of running in circles, the only place life is ever happening is here. Now, the past exists only as memory, sometimes tender, sometimes heavy. The future exists only as imagination, sometimes hopeful, sometimes anxious. But the present, this breath, this heartbeat, this moment, this is reality. And yet, it's the one place most of us rarely live. I say this not as theory, but as someone who spent far too much of life trapped between yesterday's shadows and tomorrow's promises. I know what it feels like to replay the past, wishing I had chosen differently, wishing I had spoken or acted another way. And I know the exhaustion of projecting myself into the future, wondering when things will change, when the dream will arrive, when the weight will finally lift. Living like that is like standing with one foot in yesterday and the other in tomorrow. You forget to stand at all. You forget to live. But something profound happens when you choose to step fully into this moment. It's as though a door opens and the air changes. Worries lose their grip because they cannot survive here. Regret dissolves because it belongs to a place that no longer exists. And what you are left with is the undeniable presence of life itself, simple, immediate, alive. Think of a child playing in the yard, utterly absorbed in chasing a butterfly. They are not thinking of yesterday's mistakes. They are not worrying about tomorrow's storms. They are fully engaged in the wonder before them. That is the gift of presence. And it is not just available to children, it is available to all of us. If we are willing to unclench from the stories of past and future, the science echoes this truth in its own language. Quantum physicists tell us that every possibility already exists in the quantum field. Each thought, each choice, each vibration is like tuning a radio to a specific station. And the tuner, the one that selects the frequency, is not in the past or the future. It is in the present. This moment is the point of power, where we collapse infinite possibilities into lived reality. I once read that anxiety is a misuse of the imagination. And it's true. We project ourselves forward, building scenarios of what might go wrong. And then we suffer those possibilities before they ever occur. But here's the healing truth in the present moment. Almost always, we are okay. We are breathing. We are alive. The catastrophes are not here. They are stories in the mind. The present holds a softness, a clarity, a simplicity that the future cannot offer. Presence is not about ignoring your past or abandoning your dreams for the future. It is about realizing that the only way to transform both is to meet them here. Healing happens in the present. Creation happens in the present. Love can only be felt in the present. The past cannot touch you unless you bring it forward in memory. The future cannot trouble you unless you drag it here and worry. The present, by itself, is spacious and free. I learned this lesson during one of the darkest seasons of my life. My mind was consumed with what I had lost and terrified of what was coming next. I was barely functioning, constantly trapped in what if and if only. One evening, overwhelmed, I sat down on the floor and simply listened to my breath. At first, it felt pointless, but as I kept breathing, something shifted. I realized that in that moment, right there, I was safe. My heart was beating. My body was alive. Nothing was wrong in the immediate now. And for the first time in a long while, I felt peace, not because my circumstances changed, but because I stopped abandoning myself to places that didn't exist. Presence does not fix all problems at once, but it changes the way you meet them. It's like turning on a light in a dark room. The furniture may still be there, but you can finally see where it is and move without stumbling. When you anchor yourself in the present, challenges don't vanish, but you stop drowning in them. You find clarity, you find strength, you find a sense of enoughness, even if nothing has changed externally. And perhaps most importantly, presence is where connection happens. You cannot love someone in the past. You cannot embrace someone in the future. You can only love here. You can only listen here. You can only live here. The present moment is the meeting point between your soul and the universe, between your humanity and the infinite. So ask yourself, where is your attention right now? Is it replaying yesterday's regrets? Is it racing toward tomorrow's fears? Or can you gently bring it back here to the breath moving in and out, to the ground beneath your feet, to the life flowing through you? Because here is where freedom waits. Here is where peace is always accessible. The paradox is this: the moment you fully accept the present as it is, you also open the door for change. Not change born of resistance or desperation, but change born of alignment. When you are present, you are aligned with the intelligence that moves stars and seasons, and that alignment reshapes your reality with more grace than striving ever could. The past is memory, the future is imagination, but the present is a living doorway. Walk through it, stand in it, breathe in it, and discover that what you have been searching for, safety, joy, connection, abundance, was never out there in some distant day. It was always waiting for you, right here. 3. Preparation in silence. There is a season in every journey when nothing seems to move. A silence so deep it can feel like abandonment. You pray, and there is no answer. You work, and there is no fruit. You hope, and the world around you seems unchanged. In those moments, it is tempting to believe you have failed, that life has passed you by, or that the universe has forgotten your name. But silence does not mean absence. Stillness does not mean nothing is happening. The quiet between what was and what will be is not a punishment. It is a preparation. Think of the womb. For 9 long months, the child grows in darkness, unseen to the outside world. To anyone watching, there is no evidence of life at first. Yet within that silence, within that hidden space, the most miraculous work is being done Cells are dividing. Organs are forming. A heartbeat is learning its rhythm. Life is taking shape in secret, preparing for its first breath. And no one would dare call that time wasted. It is sacred incubation. Your dreams are much the same. They, too, require their season in the dark. Before they can be born into visible reality, they must gestate in silence. They must root themselves in the unseen. And though you may feel frustrated, though your mind may scream, nothing is happening. Trust me, something is. Something always is. I learned this truth during one of the loneliest chapters of my life. Everything I had built seemed to crumble at once. Friendships ended. Opportunities vanished. The plans I clung to dissolved like smoke. I would wake in the night and sit in the dark, wondering if I had missed my chance, wondering if all the effort and faith had been for nothing. But in that silence, stripped of the noise and distractions I once leaned on, I began to hear something softer. I began to hear myself. Silence has a way of teaching you who you really are, without the applause, without the recognition, without the constant motion. It strips away the false identities we wrap ourselves in. It teaches patience, humility, and trust in the unseen currents of life. It shows you that your worth is not measured by constant activity or visible progress. Sometimes the most powerful growth is the one nobody else can see. In nature, there are countless reminders of this sacred pause. Winter trees look dead. Bare branches stretch toward a gray sky. But beneath the surface, roots are digging deeper, storing energy for the spring. If you judge the tree only by what you see above the soil, you might think it had failed. But wait a little longer, and life will erupt in blossoms you could not have imagined. The same is true for you. What looks like nothing is happening may be the most important part of your journey. Life is not punishing you with silence. Life is strengthening you in silence. It is deepening your roots, aligning circumstances, moving pieces you cannot yet see into place. The challenge, of course, is that silence is uncomfortable. We live in a world addicted to noise, to proof, to progress reports. We are trained to measure our lives by constant updates. And so when life places us in a season of stillness, we mistake delay for denial. We assume the quiet means nothing is coming. But the truth is gentler. The quiet is part of the process. There is a phrase I often return to. The pause before the song is part of the music. Imagine listening to a symphony with no rests, no breath, no silence. It would be unbearable. The beauty of music lies not only in the notes played, but in the space between them. The silence allows the sound to land, to echo, to carry meaning. So too in your life, the silence is not empty. It is shaping the music of your becoming. What if you saw your silent season not as failure, but as gestation? What if you trusted that your unseen progress was no less real than what the eye could measure? The truth is, the most profound transformations often happen quietly. A caterpillar does not announce its cocoon. It simply surrenders to stillness. And in that stillness, the impossible becomes possible. So if you find yourself in the middle of silence right now, let me say this: you are not stuck. You are not being punished. You are being prepared. Life is weaving together threads you cannot see, aligning people, opportunities, and timing, so that when the door opens, it will be the right one. Your task in this season is not to force, not to push, but to rest in trust, to let the silence do its work. And when the time is right, just as surely as the child emerges from the womb and the tree blossoms after winter, your dream will rise from the quiet, and when it does, you will look back and understand that the silence was not wasted at all. It was holy ground. So do not despise the stillness. Embrace it. Let it be your teacher. Let it remind you that life is not only about what you can see, but about what is unfolding beyond sight. The silence before birth is not failure, it is the promise of life about to begin. 4. The art of receiving. There are two kinds of energy we can live from, and I have felt them both. One is the energy of wanting, of reaching, grasping, always leaning forward into what we don't yet have. It is an energy full of tension, like a clenched fist. The other is the energy of receiving, open, soft, welcoming, like open hands. And the difference between the two can change the entire course of your life. For many years, I lived in the first kind of energy. I thought wanting harder, pushing harder, praying harder would somehow pull my dreams closer. But what I didn't realize is that wanting, when mixed with desperation, actually creates distance. It's like chasing a butterfly through a field. The harder you run, the faster it seems to fly away. You exhaust yourself in pursuit, never noticing that if you simply sat still, the butterfly might come to rest near you on its own. Receiving is not about giving up. It is not about abandoning your desires. It is about shifting your state of being from lack to readiness. When you say, "I want," what you are really broadcasting is that you don't yet have, and the universe, which mirrors back the frequency you send out, continues to reflect that sense of absence. But when you shift to "I am ready," something changes. You stop vibrating with emptiness and begin vibrating with openness. You begin to live as though the blessing already belongs to you. And that simple change unlocks doors you could never have forced open. I remember a season when I kept saying, "I want peace," every day. I prayed for it, begged for it, reached for it. But the more I wanted it, the more restless I became. Peace seemed further and further away. One day, exhausted from the effort, I whispered something different. "I am ready to receive peace." It was subtle, but in that moment, I let go of the chase. I opened my hands, and in that quiet shift, I realized peace was not something I had to catch. It was something already here, waiting for me to stop running. This is the art of receiving. It's less about doing and more about allowing. Imagine sunlight streaming through a window. You don't need to beg the light to shine. You don't need to force it in. All you do is open the curtain, and the light enters naturally. Receiving works the same way. The curtain is your resistance, your grasping, your belief that it has to be difficult. When you draw it back, you discover the light was always there, waiting. We live in a culture that glorifies striving. We're told that only through constant effort and endless hustle do we earn our blessings. And yes, effort has its place. But there comes a point where striving turns into resistance, where effort becomes the very wall that blocks what we seek. Receiving asks us to unlearn that. It asks us to soften, to trust, to remember that life has its own intelligence. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to stop pushing, to stop demanding. When will it come? How will it happen? Receiving means loosening that grip and saying instead, "I am here. I am ready. Life, show me." And when you do, you begin to notice how often grace was trying to reach you all along through a conversation, through an unexpected opportunity, through the gentle nudge of your own intuition. The truth is, what belongs to you is not running away. It does not need to be hunted down. It needs to be welcomed. And your openness is the invitation. Think of relationships. When someone gives you a gift, the joy is not only in the giving, it is also in your willingness to receive it. If you refuse, if you push it away, if you say, "I don't deserve this," you block the exchange. But when you smile, open your hands, and say, "Thank you," you complete the circle. The universe works in the same way. It longs to give, but it will not force itself upon a closed heart. Receiving is an art because it requires trust. It requires letting go of the story that says, "I must control everything. I must earn everything. I must chase everything." It replaces that story with one far simpler, far kinder. I am worthy of what flows to me. I am willing to be surprised. I am willing to let life bless me in ways I cannot yet imagine. When you begin to live in this way, something shifts inside you. You stop walking with the heavy energy of lack, and you begin walking with the lightness of expectancy. Your presence changes. Others feel it around you. Doors open where there were walls. Synchronicities appear where there once was silence. Not because you forced them, but because you finally stopped resisting them. So ask yourself, are you still grasping at life? Chasing the butterfly until you can't breathe? Or are you willing to pause? Open your hands and let the butterfly come to you. The art of receiving is the art of remembering that life is not something you have to conquer. It is something you are allowed to let in. And when you finally shift from, I want to, I am ready, you discover that the miracles you thought were far away were already standing at your door, waiting for you to open it. 5. The final test. It is often said that the darkest hour comes just before the dawn. And if you have walked this road long enough, you know how true that feels? Right when you are closest to the threshold of change, right when your heart has nearly reached the promise it's been holding on to, something rises up: doubts, delays, obstacles you thought you had already overcome. It can feel cruel, like life is taunting you. But what if it's not punishment at all? What if these final challenges are not here to stop you, but to ask you one simple question: are you ready? Every journey has its gatekeeper. Think of the old myths and stories we were raised on. The hero sets out, stumbles, learns, grows, and just when the treasure is in sight, a final dragon appears, blocking the way. It is never there to destroy the hero. It is there to test the strength they've gathered, the faith they've built, the wisdom they've earned along the way. The dragon is not proof of failure, it is proof of proximity. So it is in our lives. As you approach the threshold of your breakthrough, doubts may scream louder than ever. Old fears may resurface, whispering that you are not ready, that you are not enough, that nothing has really changed. Delays might stretch out, tempting you to believe the promise was an illusion. But I want you to hear this. The very presence of these trials is evidence that you are close. The gatekeeper does not show up at the beginning of the journey. It appears only at the end, when the crossing is near. I have lived this myself. There were seasons when I prayed and trusted, when I thought, finally, I've made peace. Finally, I'm ready. And almost immediately, everything seemed to collapse. Relationships tested, finances stretched thin, unexpected setbacks rising one after another. For a while, I thought it meant I was failing, that I wasn't aligned enough, that maybe I had done something wrong. But with time, I came to see it differently. Those storms were not meant to drown me. They were meant to reveal that I had already learned how to swim. The final test is not about perfection. It is about confirmation. It is life's way of showing you that the strength you built in silence, the faith you held in the waiting, the lessons you gathered in the dark, they are real. They live in you now. And when the gatekeeper steps out to challenge you, it is not asking you to earn your way forward. It is giving you the chance to demonstrate to yourself that you already carry what you need. Think of it this way. A bird does not know its wings work until it leaps. The leap itself is the test. And once it takes that terrifying step off the branch, the wings prove themselves. Your doubts, your delays, your obstacles, these are the leap. They feel like freefall, but they are the moment you discover you can fly. This is why I say do not be afraid when resistance appears just as you are nearing your breakthrough. Fear and doubt are not signs that you are off course. They are signs that you are standing at the door, and the door is not locked. It is waiting for you to turn the handle, even if your hand trembles as you reach for it. I know it's not easy. I know how discouraging it feels when you've given your all, when you've held the vision in your heart, and the world still seems to push back. But remember this: the delay is not denial. The challenge is not rejection. It is initiation. Sometimes the test is simply this: will you keep believing, even when nothing outside of you gives you reason to? Will you trust the unseen more than the evidence of your senses? Will you keep walking, step by trembling step, when the path ahead looks clouded with uncertainty? If you can, then you are already free, because freedom is not waiting on the other side of the test. Freedom is found in choosing faith in the midst of it. I think of the times I almost quit, moments when the silence grew too long, when the obstacles stacked too high, when I convinced myself it was useless. Looking back, those moments were always just before something shifted, always just before the breakthrough came. And I realized, with some sorrow and some gratitude, how many times I had walked away right at the edge of dawn. That is why I speak these words now, not as theory, but as truth lived. Do not give up when the test appears. Hold steady. Breathe deep. Remember who you've become. You are stronger than you know. The trials that once broke you no longer have that power. The fears that once kept you frozen are no longer chains. They are echoes. And echoes cannot hold you back unless you turn around to listen. Keep your eyes on the horizon. Keep walking toward the dawn, because the final test is not here to break you. It is here to reveal you, to show you that the person who began this journey is not the same as the one standing here now, to confirm that you are no longer the seeker, but the one who has become the answer. So when the gatekeeper appears, smile softly. Even if your knees shake, recognize it for what it is, not the end, but the sign that you are almost home. 6. Becoming the new version now. So many of us live as though life will begin once the dream arrives. We tell ourselves, when I get that job, then I'll feel confident. When I meet the right partner, then I'll open my heart. When the money comes, then I'll finally breathe easy. And yet, life has a way of waiting on us. It holds its breath until we choose to step into the version of ourselves we've been postponing. The truth is simple, but it's not always easy to accept. The future you long for is not waiting in some distant tomorrow. It is waiting in who you are willing to be today. The reality you experience is not just shaped by circumstances. It is shaped by your identity, by the way you walk, breathe, and choose in each moment. I know this because I spent years waiting for proof, waiting for signs, waiting for something outside of me to change so I could finally change inside. I thought transformation would come once life gave me permission, but permission never came. Not until I gave it to myself. Becoming the new version of yourself is not about pretending. It's not about faking joy or forcing optimism. It is about aligning your inner posture with the life you desire, here and now. It is about breathing as though peace is already yours. It is about walking as though freedom has already arrived. It is about making choices, not from fear or scarcity, but from the quiet trust that what belongs to you is already making its way to you. Think of it like this: if you plant a seed in the soil, you do not wait until the tree appears to treat it as real. You water it, you nurture it, you protect it, because you know what it carries inside. You know the tree exists in essence even before it appears in form. The same is true for your dreams. They exist in you already. To live as though they do is not delusion, it is faith. And faith is the soil in which miracles grow. There was a time when I longed for freedom from financial struggle. Every day, I said, one day, when I have enough, I'll finally feel secure. I'll finally relax. But the more I postponed that sense of security, the further it drifted. Then I asked myself, what would the secure version of me do today? And I realized it wasn't about the money at all. It was about the choices I made, the way I carried myself. The secure version of me didn't panic at every bill. The secure version of me didn't compare or grasp. The secure version breathed slower, trusted more, and lived with generosity instead of fear. So I began to practice being that version, even when my circumstances hadn't caught up yet. And slowly, almost mysteriously, life began to mirror that back to me. Opportunities aligned, resources flowed, and little by little, the external reality adjusted to match the inner one. This is the mystery of identity. Life reflects who you are being, not what you are waiting for. If you live from lack, lack expands. If you live from readiness, doors open. When you choose to embody the new version of yourself now, you shift the frequency you broadcast. And the universe cannot help but respond to that. Of course, this doesn't mean pretending that pain doesn't exist or ignoring reality. It means choosing to live from the deeper truth beneath your current circumstances. It means allowing your actions to be guided, not by fear of what is missing, but by trust in what is already present. It means asking yourself in each decision, what would the version of me who already has what I long for choose in this moment? And then daring to take that step, even if it's small. Sometimes that step is simple, taking care of your body as though it matters, speaking kindly to yourself as though you are already worthy, saying no to what drains you because the new version of you knows their value. None of these choices may look dramatic, but they are declarations to life. I am not waiting. I am already becoming. The beauty of this is that you don't need to wait for the finish line to taste the freedom. The moment you step into the new version of yourself, even in the smallest ways, you begin to feel it now. And feeling it now is what draws it closer. It's like tuning into a radio station. You don't wait for the song to play. In order to find the frequency, you tune to the frequency first, and then the music comes through. So if you've been postponing your becoming, let this be your reminder. Do not wait. Do not put your life on hold until the world catches up. Step into it now. Breathe as the healed version. Walk as the free version. Choose as the loved version. And trust that reality will align itself in time. Because life is not asking you to wait for proof. It is asking you to become the proof. And when you do, when you dare to embody the person you've been waiting to be, you discover that the dream was never far away. It was always here, waiting for you to recognize yourself. 7. The music of the soul. There is a sound inside you. Though you may not have noticed it in the rush of daily life, it is not made of words, nor does it follow the rules of human language. It is more like a melody, subtle, constant, and uniquely your own. Every soul carries this music, a frequency unlike any other, a note that cannot be replaced in the grand symphony of existence. And when you live in harmony with that inner song, life itself begins to move in rhythm around you. For a long time, I ignored my own music. I tried to play notes that weren't mine, following the expectations of others, copying melodies that seemed more acceptable, more admired, more successful. On the outside, it looked as though I was fitting in. On the inside, it felt hollow, like strumming an instrument that was always out of tune. And the more I silenced my own song, the further I drifted from myself. Perhaps you know this feeling, the quiet ache that comes when you betray your own rhythm, when you choose safety over authenticity, when you wear masks that hide your true face. That ache is your soul whispering, "This is not our song." But here's the grace: your music never leaves you. Even if you bury it under years of noise, even if you forget its sound, it waits. Like a patient musician, it waits for you to listen again. And the moment you pause, the moment you become still enough, you begin to hear it once more. Maybe in a moment of silence at dawn, maybe in the way your heart stirs when you see something beautiful, maybe in the sudden tears you can't explain. That is your melody reminding you, this is who you are. Science speaks of frequency, of vibration, of energy that shapes the physical world. Spirit speaks of purpose, of calling, of destiny. In truth, they are two languages describing the same thing. Your soul's music is your frequency. It is the energetic signature that, when lived fully, aligns you with the flow of life. You don't have to force doors open when you are living your melody. They open naturally, because the song itself guides you. Think of an orchestra. Every instrument has its place. If the violin tries to sound like the trumpet, the music falters. But when each instrument plays its own part, something greater emerges: harmony, beauty, order. You are one of those instruments. Your sound matters. Without it, the song of life is incomplete. The courage, of course, lies in choosing to play your note, even when the world around you tells you to play another. It takes strength to say, "This is my rhythm. This is my truth. This is my life." And yet, when you do, everything changes. People who resonate with your song begin to find you. Opportunities aligned with your melody appear. Struggles you once forced against begin to dissolve. Because you are no longer swimming upstream. You are being carried by the current that was always meant for you. I remember a season when I finally stopped pretending. I had spent years pursuing paths that others said were right, but none of them felt alive. One day, weary of the fight, I asked myself, what would it feel like to live my own music? The answer came not in words, but in a deep breath, a sense of release, a quiet joy. From that day forward, I chose to follow that feeling, even when it made no logical sense. And slowly, my life began to arrange itself differently. Not perfectly, not without challenge, but with a sense of alignment I had never known. That is what happens when you honor your soul's song. You step into a flow where effort turns into ease, where doors open without forcing resin-free Icarus, where synchronicities guide your steps like unseen sheet music. You begin to understand that your role is not to compose the entire symphony. Your role is to play your part fully, truly, unapologetically, and when you do, you become a beacon for others. Your authenticity gives them permission to find their own. Your courage to live your song reminds them that they, too, have a melody worth playing. In this way, your life becomes more than survival. It becomes harmony. So I ask you, what is the sound of your soul? Can you hear it beneath the noise? Can you feel it in the moments when time seems to disappear? When you are so alive that nothing else matters, that is your music, and it is waiting for you to play it. Not tomorrow, not when it's convenient, but now. Do not be afraid of dissonance. At first, when you play your true note, it may clash with the expectations of others. Some may not understand. Some may resist. But the longer you hold it, the clearer it becomes. And eventually, the world around you begins to adjust. Because the truth is, the universe does not reward imitation. It rewards resonance. Your soul's music is not meant to be silenced. It is meant to be lived, embodied, expressed in every step, every breath, every choice. And when you live it, you find that life itself begins to dance with you. So listen for the melody within you. And when you hear it, follow it. Because when you live your music, the universe plays along. 8. Trust in divine timing. There is a rhythm to life that does not always match the rhythm of our desires. We want things now immediately, instantly, without waiting. But the truth is, nothing in nature unfolds that way. A seed does not sprout the moment it is planted. A child is not born the day it is conceived. The tide does not rush in the instant we call it forth. Life moves at its own pace, with a wisdom older than our impatience. And what we often call delay is not delay at all. It is divine timing, arranging something greater than we could imagine. I remember a time in my life when I was convinced I had fallen behind. Everyone around me seemed to be moving forward. New jobs, new relationships, new beginnings. And there I was, standing still, waiting for my own breakthrough. I prayed, I planned. I pushed. But nothing seemed to change. The silence stretched long enough that I began to believe life had forgotten me. But looking back now, I see it clearly. I was not behind. I was being prepared. The timing was not wrong. It was perfect. The seed knows when to break open. The tree knows when to bud. And in the same way, your life knows when to bloom. The waiting is not punishment. It is preparation. Just as the roots of a tree sink deep into the earth before any branches appear above, your unseen growth is happening in the quiet seasons. You may not notice it day by day, but deep inside, you are strengthening, aligning, becoming ready for what is on its way. The human mind struggles with this because we are addicted to evidence. We want proof that something is happening. We want signs that progress is being made. And when we don't see it, we assume nothing is working. But think of winter. To the eye, everything looks lifeless. Trees are bare. The ground is frozen. The fields are empty. Yet beneath the surface, life is moving quietly, storing energy, waiting for the warmth of spring. The delay is not a mistake. It is the wisdom of timing. Sometimes, the very thing you think you want right now would crush you if it arrived too soon. Sometimes, what you call a setback is simply life, rearranging the pieces so that when your moment comes, it will fit perfectly. The person you were yesterday may not have been ready, but the person you are becoming is. I've come to believe that divine timing is not about the clock on the wall, but about alignment within the soul. When you are aligned, when your inner readiness meets the outer opportunity, that is when things shift. Not a moment earlier, not a moment later, and often, that shift feels sudden, like a miracle appearing out of nowhere. But in truth, it has been building quietly all along, like a flower preparing beneath the soil until the exact moment of bloom. I used to resent the phrase, "Trust the timing." It sounded like an excuse, like a way of justifying disappointment. But the older I've grown, the more I see its wisdom. Timing is everything. Too early, and even the right thing becomes wrong. Too late, and the moment has passed. But when it is right, it flows effortlessly, like a river finding its way to the sea. This doesn't mean you sit back and do nothing. The farmer still waters the seed, still tends the soil, still prepares the harvest. But he does not dig into the ground every day demanding to see progress, but he knows his role is faithfulness, and nature's role is timing. So it is with us. Your job is to keep tending your inner soil, your heart, your mind, your actions. Life's job is to bring the harvest at the perfect moment. And when it comes, it will not feel late. It will feel inevitable. Like meeting someone who feels like you've known them forever. Like walking through a door that seems it was always meant for you. Like looking back on every delay, every detour, every disappointment, and realizing they weren't mistakes. They were threads in a tapestry, weaving the exact picture you were meant to step into. So if you are waiting now, waiting for healing, waiting for love, waiting for freedom, take a deep breath. You are not forgotten. The delay is not denial. Life is not ignoring you. It is aligning for you. The universe is moving pieces you cannot yet see, preparing the way so that when your moment comes, it will not just be good, it will be right. Trust in divine timing is not always easy, but it is always worth it. Because when you learn to trust, you stop living in resistance. You stop fighting the flow of life. And instead, you begin to walk with it. You find peace, even in the waiting. You find faith, even in the silence. And one day, when the seed breaks open and the harvest arrives, you will see it clearly. It was never late. It was always perfect. 9. The collective meaning. It's easy to believe that our personal choices belong only to us, that what we think, how we feel, the way we live, is a private matter with little consequence for anyone else. But the longer I've walked through life, the clearer it has become. Who you are being does not end at the edge of your skin. Your presence ripples outward. Your vibration touches others in ways you may never see. Every time you choose to shift from lack into openness, from fear into trust, from grasping into receiving, you are not just changing your life, you are adding light to the collective field of humanity. You are raising the frequency for everyone. I remember sitting once with a friend who was going through deep grief. I had no answers for her pain, nothing I could say to make it vanish. So I just sat, quietly, holding space, breathing slowly, letting myself be present. After a while she said, "I don't know why, but I feel calmer sitting here with you." That was the moment I realized our state of being is not silent. It speaks. Even without words, it either burdens or it heals. It either contracts or it opens. And when you choose to live in a frequency of openness, you give others permission to breathe easier too. Science has its own way of describing this. Studies show that emotions are contagious. One anxious person in a room can spread that energy to everyone else. But the opposite is also true. One calm, grounded presence can steady a whole group. We are not isolated beings. We are networks of energy, constantly exchanging signals with one another. The frequency you choose for yourself does not stop with you. It becomes part of the invisible atmosphere we all share. And that means your transformation is never just personal. When you choose to rise, you create pathways for others to rise too. Think of a trail through a dense forest. The first person who walks it may struggle, cutting through branches, stumbling over rocks. But each step carves a way, and the next person who follows finds it easier. Your inner breakthroughs work the same way. Every time you shift into receiving energy instead of wanting, every time you step into trust instead of fear, you are clearing a path in the collective consciousness. You are making it easier for the next person to find their way. This is why the journey of awakening is never selfish. It is service. You may think you are healing for yourself, but in truth, you are also healing for your children, for your friends, for strangers you may never meet. Your courage to live differently changes the air we all breathe. I know this because I have felt it in my own life. There were times when I was ready to give up, ready to fall back into old patterns of despair. And then I would encounter someone who had chosen differently, someone who radiated quiet peace, who lived with gentle trust. Being near them reminded me of what was possible. Their state of being reached me without them saying a word. And because they had dared to embody that frequency, I found strength to keep going. Imagine if more of us chose that. Imagine if, instead of adding to the noise of fear and scarcity, we each began adding even a little more calm, a little more kindness, a little more trust. The collective field would shift, and it does shift every single time one of us chooses differently. So the next time you wonder if your inner work matters, remember this: your peace is not just your peace. Your joy is not just your joy. Your healing is not just your healing. Each choice sends ripples outward into the ocean of humanity. Each time you breathe more softly, you remind someone else it is safe to breathe too. This is the deeper meaning of personal growth. It is not just about getting what you want or becoming who you hope to be. It is about contributing to the rising of all of us. It is about lifting the collective song, one note at a time. Until harmony becomes possible, you may never see the full impact of your choices. You may never know how your presence steadied a stranger, how your laughter lifted a friend, how your calm prevented a storm. But that does not mean it didn't happen. The unseen is just as real as the seen. So walk gently, not only for yourself but for all of us. Choose receiving energy, not only because it opens doors in your own life, but because it opens doors in the collective consciousness. Each time you rise, you make it easier for someone else to believe they can rise too. And perhaps that is the most beautiful truth of all, that our lives are not separate stories, but verses in the same song, And when you choose to live your verse in openness and trust, you help the entire song sound a little more like home. 10. Quantum science and shifting realities. Quantum physics can sound intimidating at first. Tunneling, entanglement, decoherence. These are words that feel like they belong only in textbooks or laboratories. But when you look closer, what science is discovering is not so different from what the soul has always whispered. Reality is not as solid as it seems. We are not trapped in one fixed version of ourselves. We are simply tuning into one channel of existence, while infinite other channels remain available. Think of an old radio. When you turn the dial, countless stations are broadcasting at the same time. Yet you can only hear the one you are tuned into. If the signal is static or unpleasant, you don't assume that's the only sound in existence. You simply adjust the frequency. In the same way, your life is not about forcing reality to become something new. It is about shifting the dial of your awareness to align with the version of life already waiting for you. Quantum tunneling is a phenomenon where particles pass through barriers that should, by all logic, to be impossible to cross. To me, this feels very much like what happens when you suddenly find yourself breaking through patterns that once felt unshakable. One day, you are weighed down by the same old fears, the same financial struggles, the same loneliness, and then something shifts. It doesn't happen slowly, step by step. It happens all at once, like walking through a wall that was never truly solid. Science calls it tunneling. The spirit calls it transformation. Entanglement is another word that fascinates me. It describes how two particles, once connected, remain linked across any distance. Change one, and the other responds instantly, no matter how far apart they are. Doesn't that sound like love? Doesn't that sound like the way we can feel the presence of someone we care about, even when they are miles away? On the level of the soul, we are entangled with the lives we are meant to live. The future version of you, the one who is free, whole, and abundant, has already sent threads of connection backward through time, tugging you forward, guiding you towards alignment. The synchronicities you notice, the sudden insights, the unexplainable knowing that is entanglement at work. And then there is decoherence, the way a system collapses from infinite possibilities into one measurable outcome. It is the scientific way of saying what spiritual traditions have always known, that consciousness chooses every thought, every emotion, every act of attention collapses the field of infinite potential into one lived reality. You do not need to create a new world from nothing. You simply need to choose, over and over again, which frequency you will live from. I used to think change meant building an entirely new life, piece by piece. But the older I get, the more I see it differently. Change is not about inventing something that doesn't exist. It is about remembering and shifting. The life you long for already exists in the field of possibility. The version of you who is free already lives in another channel. All that is asked of you is to shift your attention, to tune your dial, to allow yourself to step into that version. This shift is not forced. It is chosen in quiet moments. It happens when you choose gratitude over fear, even for a breath. When you choose love instead of bitterness, when you choose to trust timing rather than panic over delay. Each choice is a subtle adjustment of the dial, and little by little, your channel clears, and you begin to hear the music of the reality that was waiting for you all along. The beauty of science meeting spirit is that it gives us language for what we've always felt. We don't need to worship the terms themselves. What matters is living the truth they point toward. You don't have to understand quantum mechanics to live in alignment with it. Just as you don't need to understand electricity to turn on a lamp, you only need to know how to flip the switch. And the switch is your awareness. So when life feels heavy, when it seems like you are locked in an old reality, remind yourself there are other channels. There are other versions of you. You don't need to push down the walls. You don't need to force your way through. like particles tunneling through barriers. You can shift through with ease, simply by remembering that solidity is not final. It is flexible. The channel of fear is always available. So is the channel of peace. The channel of scarcity is always available. So is the channel of abundance. They all exist now. Which one you live in depends on where you tune your heart, your thoughts, your presence. You are not waiting for the future to arrive. The future you seek is waiting for you to arrive in it. The shift happens here, in consciousness, in the quiet but powerful decision to embody the reality you long for as though it already belongs to you. Quantum physics may call it tunneling, entanglement, decoherence. Spirituality may call it faith, alignment, remembrance. But both are speaking of the same mystery. You are never trapped. You are always free to shift. And the moment you realize this, the barriers around you begin to dissolve. So breathe deeply. Right here, remember the truth. The new version of life is not somewhere far away. It is already here, already broadcasting, already waiting. All that's left is for you to tune in, remembering who you are. What you have been searching for has never been beyond your reach. It has never been locked away in a distant future or hidden behind impossible walls. It has always been here, quietly waiting in the present, woven into the frequency you choose to live from each day. The distance between you and the life you dream of is not measured in miles or years. It is measured only in vibration, in the subtle choice of how you breathe, how you think, how you love in this moment. Many of us spend so much of our lives striving, straining, pushing ourselves to become someone else. We chase after success as though it were a finish line. We try to mold ourselves into images that others might applaud. And in doing so, we exhaust ourselves. But here is the truth. I had to learn the hard way. You don't need to become someone else. You don't need to fight your way into a different identity. What you truly need is to remember who you already are. This remembering is not dramatic. It does not arrive with fireworks or thunder. It comes softly, like the recognition of an old song you forgot you knew. It comes when you notice that, beneath all the noise, there is a steady rhythm inside of you, your soul's music. When you allow yourself to live from that rhythm, life does not need to be forced. You stop swimming against the current and instead feel yourself carried by a river that has always been flowing. The miracles you long for, the sense of belonging, the freedom, the abundance, the peace stop being rare events. They stop being prizes you must chase or beg for. They become the natural breath of your life. As ordinary and steady as the rising of the sun, this is the gift of alignment. What once felt like magic simply becomes your everyday. But let me be honest, this path is not about avoiding pain or pretending darkness doesn't exist. I have known the nights when the world felt silent and empty, when every prayer seemed to echo back without answer. I have walked through the seasons where nothing seemed to move, where every effort felt wasted. And yet, those very seasons were where the deepest remembering happened. It was in the waiting, in the silence, in the seeming stillness, that I discovered the truth. The seed was never dead. It was simply germinating. The frequency I longed for was not absent. It was inviting me to tune in more deeply. The shift you seek does not happen because the outer world suddenly arranges itself in your favor. It happens because your inner world adjusts to a new song, and when it does, the outer world cannot help but reflect it. What you once called coincidence becomes a daily rhythm of synchronicity. What you once called luck becomes the natural unfolding of alignment. And what you once thought was delay reveals itself as perfect timing. So take this with you. You don't need to strain. You don't need to live as though you are one step behind your own life. You are already within the music of your soul. All you need is to listen. All you need is to trust that the vibration you choose in this breath, in this thought, in this step, is shaping the reality you walk into. Your power is not in controlling everything around you. Your power is in remembering who you are within. And from that remembrance, you live not as someone waiting for miracles, but as someone breathing them every day. Life will give you invitations, moments of fear or trust, bitterness or gratitude, self-doubt or self-respect. Each choice is a tuning fork. Each choice is you deciding which channel you will hear, which world you will live in, and little by little, choice by choice, you find yourself standing in the reality that once seemed so far away. The life you want is not a dream that may or may not happen. It is already here, vibrating patiently, waiting for you to step into it. And when you do, when you stop trying to force yourself into another shape, when you simply remember the truth of your own being, you will see that what you called magic is not rare at all. It is as near as your own breath. It is the natural expression of a soul aligned with itself. So I leave you with this: you are not unfinished. You are not lacking. You are not broken. You are a song that has always been whole, always been playing, always been waiting for you to hear it fully. And when you do, you will see that the extraordinary is not hidden in some distant future. It is right here, now, in the ordinary rhythm of your life. And from that place, miracles stop being events. They become your way of being. They become the quiet miracle of you, remembering who you are.